Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about The Boys Season 5 Episode 6. It's called Though the Heavens Fall. So spoilers for the episode as always. And we're in a weird place with The Boys Season 5, I feel. Or I'm in a weird place with it at the very least. Which is to say that it's been kind of middling. Tedious in some ways. Last episode was arguably the most tedious of the bunch, and this episode, now the third last episode of the entire show, has a lot of weight get into it because it has to start ramping things up. It has to get us towards that finale and the big payoff and all the things coming together. Did it successfully do those things? Did this episode manage to right the ship, as it were, into feeling like it was getting to the end game of the show? I mean, things happened. It feels like they finally stopped spinning their wheels in some ways. Were the events that actually took place satisfying? I think that's actually kind of debatable in a lot of ways. Especially since I don't think everything in this episode is bad. There's some things that are actually even good, I would say. But some of the things that finally get moving actually kind of just highlight how much they weren't moving before in a weird way. For example, so we finally get to the Soup who's got the V1, right? And we do a whole plot where we kidnap his old girlfriend from an old folks home to lure him in to get the V1, the bomb site is his name, I think. And like there's good parts to that, don't get me wrong. I actually really like Kimiko's like adoration of her, like, you know, her nerding out, wanting to meet her was kind of a sweet side of things. But one of the things that comes up here when she talks to this Soup, who obviously is kind of under duress because she's been kidnapped, but the idea comes up about the V1 is that the reason why Bombsight even has any, why he stole some in the first place, is because he wanted her to live forever with him. Golden Geisha is the name of this old Soup, if I recall correctly. And she didn't want to take it. She didn't want to live forever because she thought that would be torture. She thought that growing old, or staying alive and being the same age whilst everyone around her grows old and dies, would be too sad. And it's why her and Bombsight aren't together anymore, is because she's growing old and he isn't. And he was too sad by that. And he's hoping that one day that she'll change her mind and want to take the V1, but she doesn't. And it brings up genuinely an interesting point where clearly Kimiko feels some of these things. This idea of like she doesn't want to be immortal because that means she actually has to grow, she has to stay alive whilst Frenchie grows old and dies. And it turns out that she's even spoken to Starlight about this, and Starlight feels the same way. It actually feels kind of horrific, the idea that they'll get to keep living forever but watch the people they love die. That it's kind of a curse, right? The vampire's curse, if you will. And I thought this was a good point. I thought this was a nice, actual, genuine reason to cause conflict, right? This idea that Frenchie and Huey care so much about getting the V1 to protect them from the virus, but they've never stopped to wonder what it would actually mean for these two characters to actually live forever. I thought that was a nice, natural source of conflict that could be mined for story, but the reason why it also kind of threw up some annoyances here for me is because it meant every single like little hint they've had in the last like 4 episodes of maybe after the honeymoon period of Frenchie and Kimiko finally being a couple, of like, oh, maybe we don't see eye to eye on some things, maybe we both don't want the same things. All of that was pointless. All of that was just trying to like tease drama for the sake of having some drama to tease, when you actually had a very real thing that could be a genuine thing that divides them, right? In the same way that two people can be very right for each other, but then the subject of having kids comes up, and it's like, oh, all of a sudden, despite the fact that we were perfect for each other, one wants kids, one doesn't. That's like a natural kind of thing where, oh, we have to reckon with that, even if we're otherwise completely happy with each other. This subject of, I don't actually want to live forever, even if it possibly means dying soon, because of the not growing old, the watching your loved ones die, the curse of it all, that's actually an interesting point to make. And it's both kind of a cool thing to bring up, but also it's kind of like dealt with so quickly because Frenchie just kind of changes his mind and agrees that they should destroy the V1 basically the next time it comes up. It's like, you know, later in the same episode. Now, Huey's not around for all this, so Huey may have a very different reaction to this. Maybe there'll be more of a conflict with him and Starlight over the V1. Not that it really matters anymore, because they don't have the V1, Homelander does. But, you know, it felt like there could have been more done with that debate instead of the kind of vague debates that we've been having. Even in this episode, there's another scene with Huey and Starlight where they're looking up at the clouds and it's a romantic moment, and she's like, oh, this is one of my favorite things to do with you, and he's like, oh, you're saying that as if it's the last time we'll get to do this, like, you know, you're like, you're gonna live, I'm gonna make sure you live. There's been kind of this vague, like, dancing around this idea of her not actually wanting to get the V1 and maybe having a death wish even. Like, we've been kind of dancing around that all season, and it's like, oh, this actual genuine, like, it may actually be cruel to make her live forever. Even if it seems like a good thing in the short term, in the long term, it may actually be very, very unnatural and very, very, like I say, cruel to make her live through all that. There's almost a selfish quality to want her to survive this. So, there's actually a genuinely interesting story mechanic there that is good, but it feels like it kind of highlights that we've been wasting our time with other stuff throughout a lot of the season, and then also it's kind of wrapped up very quickly with Frenchie changing his mind. Maybe you could say it's sweet that he understands it so quickly and decides that, yeah, we'll destroy the V1. But regardless, it just, you know, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And likewise, this whole, like, building to bombsight having the V1, like, this entire season has been just chasing the MacGuffin of the V1. Waiting for the virus to cook and chasing the V1. That has been this entire season up until this point, and it's not like it's really that much of a grand payoff to all that wait either. It's, you know, it's like, it's fine. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with, like, the way it plays out for the most part. Well, until Soldier Boy shows up, and then yeah, I mean, okay, well, all right. So the other thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way right at the start of the episode is that immediately, remember last episode, the point of the dog story was that Butcher kind of said, hey, if we have a chance to get the V1 to save the girls, we'll do it. And it was kind of like them patching things up. The first conversation Huey and Butcher have in this episode is Butcher saying, oh, that's it, the virus is ready, well, screw the V1, let's go kill Homelander. And the debate just starts again because the virus is ready. I was like, why did we even do the patching up last episode? We're just starting the argument again immediately in the next one. I don't know, that annoyed me. Anyway, so yeah, the whole Soldier Boy thing, right? So this whole thing with Sage playing Soldier Boy, trying to, like, manipulate him to an extent to make sure that Homelander doesn't get the V1. And when she uses Ashley to mind read him, and I don't really want to talk about the steps of that, it's whatever, right? The whole face in the back of Ashley's head's just a nothing burger to me. But basically, she lures them to a spot thinking they might find V1, but it's actually footage of Homelander and Stormfront when Stormfront was in the hospital bed. And it's designed to make Soldier Boy hate Homelander, right? This idea that deep inside, he's actually kind of weirdly proud of him as his son or something like that. So this is going to make sure to cause a rift so that Soldier Boy will definitely not want to help him. That he will, and he walks out of the scene saying, you don't deserve to live forever, implying that it's kind of worked. And Sage also decides to go and see the boys, right? She goes to them. And that was kind of interesting at first because it was like, hey, she's interacting with a bunch of characters that she's not really interacted with before. That was kind of interesting to a point. But it does play into this whole idea of we've had Soldier Boy flipping backwards and forwards of, like, you know, is he on Homelander's side? Is he against Homelander? Is he on his side? Is he against him? We've been doing that all season. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there's a very good chance that at the end of this episode, when he hands over the V1 to Homelander, that it's not what it seems, right? Because the whole thing is that Sage is shocked. She's like, no, he's supposed to hate Homelander. The idea that this is the one thing she couldn't predict, the one thing she didn't see coming, was Soldier Boy actually still siding with Homelander. I don't think he has. I think he says that this is what Stormfront would want, this is what Clara would want, who uses her actual name. But he's just used his power to depower Bombsight, right? That's the whole thing, is that you can go and grow old with your love of your life now, right? So he runs off. I think the play here, I think Soldier Boy is still against Homelander, but what he's done is he's hoping that his power has also neutralized the V1. I think that's what he's playing here. I think we're going to find out that he is not flipped, or he flips back once again to, oh no, Soldier Boy's actually against Homelander. We're going to get that revealed by the finale where Homelander can actually die because he doesn't get real V1, or he gets neutralized V1, whatever way you want to phrase it. I think that's what they're doing here. I think Soldier Boy is setting him up to make Homelander think he's invincible, but he's not actually invincible. Which is, I don't know. It's a little interesting because I didn't think of that immediately. That was sort of what I was like sort of thinking about it after the episode was over. In the moment where it cut to credits and Homelander was firing his heat vision into the air, and it was like, oh my god, he's going supernova. I was kind of like, okay, this makes sense to ramp up for the finale, is that it feels like Homelander is more powerful than he's ever been, and maybe we'll get one last grasp of hope to try and take him out or something. But then I started thinking about it and kind of what the trick might be here about the V1 not really being good anymore. I was like, okay, it's not that exciting, I guess. So I don't know. Like, in some ways, I appreciate that this finally got moving. It finally had things happen with the V1. We're not chasing it anymore. But it also just kind of highlighted that we spent 5 episodes pretty much. Well, maybe I shouldn't count the first one, because the first one was the whole camp stuff. But, like, episode 2 onwards has all been about finding the V1 and cooking the virus, and we've just been spinning our wheels doing that for all that time, whilst we just do the same old shtick that The Boys has been doing for a long time. And maybe it's just because it is season 5 and some of the old jokes aren't working as well anymore. Maybe it's because the story and the writing's not as good, I'm noticing the repeated jokes. But, you know, it's hard not to notice that, you know, we have, like, you know, when they're escaping the old folks' home in this episode, one of the super-powered elderly people they fight has a really long ball sack. It's hard not to just kind of roll your eyes and go, well, that's just another take on Love Sausage, right? That's basically all that is. So that's like something that the show does a lot, is just have kind of a gross superpower, or we do like the Vought parodies of stuff in the real world, and they're not all bad, don't get me wrong. I actually, you know, I got a chuckle out of Firecracker doing the Nicole Kidman, like, you know, the theater, like, welcome to AMC thing. Like, I was amused by that, right? The deep popcorn bucket was, you know, maybe a little on the nose, but, like, sure, whatever. Like, it was amusing enough at the start of the episode, for sure. When we kept getting these cutaways to, like, the old TV shows and movies that the old elderly superheroes were in, it started to feel a little bit old with that stuff. And I think that also feels old because it also ties into the big problem of this season. The other big problem is how much of it is about setting up the next spin-off. So here's the thing. If you didn't know this, like, as you were watching it, maybe you would just think it was a little bit dull. But I do know, as I'm watching it, that they are doing Vought Rising. They're doing a show where the main characters are going to be Soldier Boy and Stormfront, set in the past. So every single time they start talking about Stormfront or Clara, and they start talking about what she would want, and the fact that Soldier Boy spent decades with her, and we set up all these elderly superheroes in the old folks' home, I was getting very cynical, because all I could think was, oh, are they setting up a bunch of minor characters for the spin-off? Is this going to be like a bunch of people we see as young characters in the other show? In fact, even Bombsight in Golden Geisha, like, the actor who plays Bombsight, because he's not aged, he might just be in that show. And it feels like we're just setting up a bunch of stuff so that, like, when that show starts, it's like, hey, look at all these things you recognize from The Boys season 5. It's kind of wild because during season 4, and I was getting to the back half of season 4, I remember thinking, oh, this feels a bit weaker than the previous seasons. It feels like it's mostly just setting up season 5, so the structure feels a bit off, the pacing feels a bit off. I could not have predicted that, one, I would feel season 5 was worse than season 4 when I said that, but I also couldn't have imagined that instead of setting up the next season, it's setting up the spin-off, right? And it feels like a lot of the stuff with Soldier Boy talking about his past and all these older superheroes we're setting up is all in service of setting up the next thing rather than actually doing a proper conclusion to the thing we're actually watching. And that is very frustrating to me. It's actively making me not want to watch the other show. It's not setting it up for me in a way where I'm excited for Vought Rising. It's making me actively annoyed at it and want it to not exist, because I feel that this season would be better written if they weren't setting up a spin-off. It may not solve all the problems, but it might, you know, it is this glaring thing hanging over the head of this entire season so far. that's been more egregious with each passing episode, honestly. So yeah, that was really rubbing me the wrong way throughout this one as well. So, and it's just a shame because I actually like Soldier Boy as a character. I do. So it's kind of a shame that everything with him this season is a little bit tainted because it just kind of feels like backdoor pilot stuff. So there's that. There's other plots going on. Like I said, Huey and Starlight are going off to plant the virus at the church where Homelander does his service every Sunday now because, you know, the whole new church thing. And this was kind of a nothing plotline as well, which basically led to a Starlight being confronted by the preacher's the preacher character. I do not remember. Oh Father, that's his name. Of course it is. Why would it be anything else but Oh Father? But Oh Father like catches her, and they've known each other since they were younger, because she was in the whole church scene. That's a big part of her backstory. But she basically has to stall and try and talk to him for a while, and then it, you know, erupts into a fight. And honestly, it was one. It felt like a nothing thing because he just lets them go at the end, which felt a bit weird. Even though Huey was threatening him with the virus, but it's like surely you can't just plant that virus now. He knows you were here. Surely he's going to tell people they were snooping around doing something. We have to check the place, or whatever. Especially since he knows he even had the virus with him by the end of the episode, or the end of the scene. But also, it just kind of felt lame because it felt like Starlight just like got her ass kicked really easily. It was like, hey, Oh Father's sonic scream is way more powerful than her powers. Like, it's giving her a headache and she can't use her powers anymore. It felt like just really rushed and just poorly thought out, just for the sake of wrapping it up as quickly and as conveniently as possible, because it's not what the episode was focusing on. So that felt pretty lame to me. And then the other thing that felt very lame was the subplot this episode with the Deep. I thought was pretty lame. Obviously, they were doing some comedy stuff here where they're like, hey, we're building an oil pipeline, and people are yelling about it. Hey, Deep, go do a PSA saying how it's a good thing for the environment and how you're behind it 110%. The payoff to this is that Black Noir, pissed off from last episode because the Deep killed the director and that he was starting to make, you know, real headway with. The Black Noir, we don't know this at first, admittedly, we just sort of hear about the disaster, but the pipeline spills, and there's the biggest ecological disaster in America's history happens, where billions of fish are dying, and the Deep's like, you know, trying to resuscitate fish while he's covered in oil, and the fish tells him it's all his fault before he dies. It's, you know, they're doing the whole shtick. But it all turns out to be Black Noir, right? They're in their podcast room, and Black Noir is like, hey, that's, you know, revenge is sweet, bro, or whatever he says. And it turns out he did this. He punched a hole in the pipeline intentionally to make the Deep look bad for revenge. And the Deep just gets mad and strangles him to death. Also stabs him up the chin. And this is kind of like a no-win scenario, honestly, this plotline, because I thought to myself when this ended and like Black Noir's just lying there dead and the Deep leaves the room, I thought, oh, that's it. But at the same time, I also feel like I didn't really want like this plotline in the first place. This rivalry between the Deep and Black Noir just feels like tacked on. Like, we need something for the Deep to do. That's it. That's what this plotline feels like. We want him to do something beyond just occasionally following a Homelander order. When honestly, that might be the best thing for him at this point in the show. Like, just have him be the henchman when he needs a henchman, and that's fine. The Deep doesn't necessarily need to have his own plotline every episode, but they felt the need to give him one. And what they came up with was him doing this podcast and having this rivalry where he treats Black Noir like shit, and Black Noir eventually does this revenge thing, and now it's wrapped. And maybe there'll be consequences. Maybe Homelander will be pissed that Black Noir's dead, and like something will come from it. I don't know. But I found myself just kind of being like, oh, that's all that was. It just built up to the Deep killing him in the podcast room, just strangling him with a cable and stabbing him, and that's it. I don't know, it just felt like a bit of a nothing burger to me. So yeah, that was a little bit lame. Anything else interesting happen here that I should talk about? I've not even mentioned Paul Reiser yet, actually. That's actually quite funny. I've been speaking here for about almost 20 minutes, and I've not even mentioned Paul Reiser, who is in several scenes in this episode. The whole thing at the movie theater is that he's working there, and they go to him because he might be able to figure out where Bombsight is, which leads them to the old folks' home. And then eventually Homelander finds Paul Reiser, and Paul Reiser's like, hey, like, you know, I'll tell you whatever you want to know. which I kind of appreciated that Paul Reiser didn't turn into a bad guy here. He just, like, he doesn't feel like he pulls a heel turn because he's, like, telling Homelander what he wants to know. Homelander can just melt him with his face. He's just doing it to stay alive, so you never think of him as a bad guy. But at the same time, he does have maybe one of the most interesting Homelander scenes that Homelander's had this season, which is where Homelander realizes that this guy, despite the fact that he doesn't want to die, isn't scared of Homelander. He doesn't fear him like the other people in the season have been doing with their heartbeats racing. He kind of pities him a little bit and says, hey, you had a tough rap. You had all these pressures growing up. You had, this problem and that problem. And, you're worried about becoming irrelevant and going old and being shoved off to the old folks home. Like, hey, inevitability, nature comes for you. And he kind of, like, almost, like, comforts him and listens to his fears and, like, says out loud what Homelander's been scared of to some extent. It's probably the most genuine father-like scene that someone's had with Homelander. So he lets him go. And that's kind of fine. Like, I like Paul Reiser as an actor. I liked him appearing here. I will say his shtick, which is to constantly make references to people he's had sex with back in the day, like, it did get old after maybe the third sex joke. And he kept doing it. And he kept doing it through all the scenes with the boys and the old folks home, and then he kept doing it with Homelander. Like, it became his running thing is to make sex jokes. So much like the joke about, oh, this superhero's got a long ball sack, or the Deeps, like, being forced to, like, kill fish that he cares about. Like, just some of this stuff is feeling very old hat at this point. And that would be one thing if it was there, but everything else was, like, great, and I was really invested in the story. But because the story's showing all these cracks, it's not quite, working. It's like I'm just noticing not enjoying some of the comedy as much as I used to be. So, yeah. And it kind of feels like a lot of the main characters are kind of in, like, a bit of a rut from a character progression point of view. Butcher's very much guilty of that. I guess it's worth mentioning that Paul Reiser does point out that MM's kind of turned into more of a Butcher type character and how it's kind of sad. And it seems like MM does kind of react to that a little bit, so maybe he'll regain his humanity by the end of the show, perhaps. But yeah, that's me. I don't really have much more to say. I'm a little bit underwhelmed. It's kind of like, this feels like it was finally wrapping up all the things that the show's been spinning its wheels for. So I don't want to just give some copium, but, maybe this means that we can just have, like, a good 2-part finale now. We can just have the last 2 episodes, completely just tell a complete story, and that would be great. But, there's so many stuff left dangling. Like, we still have Ryan, like, out there probably showing up again in the last episode, at least I would assume, or... who knows what else. The characters from Gen V, I expect, might show up, especially since their show got cancelled and they might not be in anything after this. So it feels like, not that they knew that when they filmed this. I'm not sure, but, like, I suspect they still want to give them a cameo by the end and help in the good fight against Homelander. But it's a shame. Honestly, it's a shame how much I'm feeling about this final season of The Boys. And because season 4 was already a bit of a downstep, but it was kind of like not that much of a downstep where you could believe, they're setting things up. The final season can come out, swinging and really give a payoff to everything. And it's just been kind of a dud. Especially now. And I feel more confident saying that now that we're 6 episodes out of 8. Like, even if this last pair of episodes are 10 out of 10s, they are completely nailing it, and it feels like the epic conclusion that we always wanted from The Boys, it would still be a weak season. It would be a weird asterisk of good finale, but a bad final season. And there's other shows like that. I think Lost is kind of like that. I like the finale to Lost quite a bit, but season 6 is definitely the worst season. For sure. A lot of spinning its wheels, waiting for that final little run of episodes. Like, there's definitely shows that are like that, but it's a shame, especially when it's only an 8-episode season, right? This show is only 8 episodes per season, and yet it still feels guilty of having to pad in the final season, which is weird. But anyway, that's my thoughts on this week's episode of The Boys. Hopefully we get some good stuff in the last couple of weeks, but yeah, not feeling super positive about it right now, but that's how I'm feeling. So let me know what you thought of this episode of The Boys in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff helps out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Yeah, thanks to everyone who already does. I'm just losing my train of thought. Honestly, I'm recording this early today. I need to go have breakfast. So thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?